There are a lot of people out there who actually are able to just be in chill mode, but I would say that most people that I see in my office anyway, the majority of them are not able to get out of fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode. There's a part of their system that just won't shut off because they've been either in chronic stress for too long and their body doesn't know how to get out of it, or they're just susceptible to always getting into stress over anything that triggers them.
Are you ready to transform your health journey? Welcome to the Holistish Podcast, where science meets holistic wellness to help you take control of your health. I'm Lianne Balazsi, an osteopath with a background in psychology, athletic therapy, and occupational therapy, here to guide you through practical ways to feel your best without relying solely on doctor visits or prescriptions. Join me each week for deep dives, expert insights, and real-life wellness experiments as we explore the powerful connection between body and mind. Whether you're new to holistic health or just looking for fresh perspectives, you're in the right place. Let's start unlocking your healthiest, happiest self together. This is the Holistish Podcast. Before we dive in, a quick reminder. I'm an osteopath, not a medical doctor, and this podcast is for informational purposes only. The content shared here is based on my personal experience and education in health and holistic wellness. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have about your own particular situation and your health. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
So I don't know if this is your case, but I find these days when I turn on my Instagram, I tend to follow a lot of people in the health field. So the algorithm shows me not just health experts, but any health influencer who wants to talk about health. It's just a constant on my feed. And don't get me wrong, I think it's amazing that more and more people are talking about important aspects about health, but a lot of people are throwing around a lot of terms that I don't think the non-scientific or the non-health field people know. Like, people start going right into talking about polyvagal theory, or they talk about the vagus nerve or nervous system regulation. But if I had no healthcare training in my background and I kept hearing that all over the place, I would honestly be questioning, what the heck does that even mean? So I thought today, maybe I could help you out. So if you're not understanding all this nervous system talk that you're hearing on Instagram, say no more. I got you. We are going to cover a brief overview of the nervous system. So how we turn into stress, what actually is, the stress activations in the body, what is a regulated nervous system, and also how do you get to that point where your body is just under constant stress. So, you ready? Buckle up. If you'd like to follow along as I'm describing this, I actually created a little flowchart for you so that you can follow along. Because so for some people, the terms I'm going to use might be a little confusing, and there's a lot of branches to how the nervous system works. So if you want some clarity, I'm a visual person. I like to listen and follow along with a flowchart. I created one just for you. So I'm going to link it in the show notes. If you want, you can pause right now and go and grab that. You can also find it at holistish.com/4. So that's for episode 4. So go grab your flowchart and then come back and you can follow along with me as I go through the nervous system. Did you get it? Okay, let's go. We're in for a ride. The nervous system consists of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system, it consists of having your brain and your spinal cord. So that's really like the core. It's the center of your body. Anything that branches out from the brain and the spinal cord is your peripheral nervous system. You have two things happening. You have input. So you have sensory input. So that's when we touch, feel. The information that we receive in our hands, for example, when you touch something, it goes up your nervous system, up into your brain, and gives your brain the information. You also have the output section, which is all the motor output. So, for example, if you touch a very hot surface, you have the peripheral nervous system that's going to be in play. So the sensory input is also called the afferent system, and the motor output is the efferent system. It has an effect on something. So when you go to touch this hot surface, the afferent system picks up the information, sends it up to the nervous system, actually to the spinal cord. It doesn't even have time to get up to the brain to process. It's already sending you a reflex information back down into your hand to remove your hand. And that part of removing your hand is the motor output, the efferent system. And of course, you do get a delay up to the brain where finally you go, ow, that's hot. But you've already removed your hand by then. It's a very efficient system, and it has multiple things going on at once all the time. So from that motor output part, we have the somatic nervous system. So that's what controls all your muscles. So any kind of muscle contraction, any movement you're doing controlled by you is your brain sending signals down to make a movement. That is your somatic nervous system. But you also have your autonomic nervous system. So this is all the things you can't control, like your heartbeat. Of course, you can go and do deep breaths to help lower it, but the actual lowering or increasing of your heart rate is all done automatically for you. Same as breathing. You can try and hold your breath, but at one point, your body will force you to take a breath again. So within this autonomic nervous system, you have the sympathetic nervous system and you have the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is anytime you feel there is a threat. That is like your stress response system. So when you look back into ancient times when maybe we would be chased by bigger predators, it would ignite your fight or flight system. And now with new studies, they're showing there's also freeze response and there's fawn response. So we have a few different ways that we respond once a bigger threat comes and invades our space and makes us react to the situation. And some will react in different ways. So if you are in a constant state of stress, someone who's just really has a stressful job, for example, they may be in a constant state of fight or flight. So even that coworker that might seem aggressive all the time, they might actually be a sweetheart when they're not under a bunch of constant stress, but their stress response is to be in fight mode. So they're just fighting everyone. They're finding a way to pick at everyone because that's their way of dealing with their stress. But if you took all those stressors away, it's possible that they're actually a very sweet, kind person. It's just hard to see when they're always in that stress loop. The parasympathetic nervous system is when we're chill. So it's the rest and digest mode. So that's where ideally we should all be most of the time. And then when there is, say, a bigger threat, like say a sudden fire erupts in your building, that's when the sympathetic nervous system would come in to get you to hustle out of that space to safety. And then once you're back in safety, the parasympathetic should come back and kick in. Unfortunately, in today's society, we do not go into parasympathetic that easily. There are a lot of people out there who actually are able to just be in chill mode, but I would say that most people that I see in my office anyway, the majority of them are not able to get out of fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode. There's a part of their system that just won't shut off because they've been either in chronic stress for too long and their body doesn't know how to get out of it, or they're just susceptible to always getting into stress over anything that triggers them. So what kind of factors activate the sympathetic nervous system? Things like stress, obviously, fears, anger, worry, excessive thinking. And honestly, one big one that people don't always think about is excess exercise. So all my girlies who like to do HIIT 7 times a week, you need to make some adjustments because you might feel great now doing those HIIT classes all the time. But if you do that over a prolonged period of time, your body is releasing too much cortisol and your body's on too much stress mode. and it will catch up to you in the end. So different hormones that get released when you're always in a stressed out state are insulin, cortisol, and thyroid hormones. Those are often some of the main ones that are circulating too much when you're in a constant state of stress. It increases your blood pressure, your blood sugar levels, and it also starts breaking down muscle for fuel. When you're being overridden by the sympathetic nervous system, it's going to increase blood supply to your skeletal muscles to almost be like you're always primed and ready to either run away or fight. So it's priming your muscles to prepare for fight. And it's going to lower your digestion. You're going to have less blood flow going towards digesting. Everything will get put on hold. So funny enough, a lot of people who will come to see me will have stress, but they'll also be very constipated because if they're always in fight or flight mode, there's never enough time to actually absorb proper nutrients and get the transit moving properly. So why don't we explore what rest and digest feels like? And you tell me how much better this sounds. Usually what helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system is rest, is sleep, meditation, relaxation techniques, and different relaxation therapies like massage, acupuncture, and feelings of just being in a community and loved. Those are usually things that will activate your parasympathetic nervous system. Sounds quite nice, doesn't it? And usually when that happens, you have more encouragement of producing digestive enzymes. So there's enzymes from the pancreas that can help to break down food, make more bile, and other digestive enzymes that just help with proper breakdown of food so you can actually absorb your nutrients better. The parasympathetic nervous system helps increase digestion, elimination. It boosts immune function, and it also helps build up the body so the nutrients that you're actually eating are getting absorbed properly and are there to feed your muscle and your bones and make your cells function better so you have better energy. So now you might be saying, okay, that all sounds good, Lianne, but how does an osteopath detect all that? That's pretty detailed and it's deeper. And yeah, I'm not going to tell you that I can feel your nervous system is working or not, but there are indications through your musculoskeletal system and also with how you hold your head and your neck that usually give a pretty good indication of if you're in a stress state or not. And it can be tricky sometimes because some people, when I'm sitting and talking with them, they can be sitting and looking super relaxed. And I can ask them to rate their stress from 0 to 10. 10 being you're ripping your hair out because you can't take it anymore. 0 being that you're chill on a beach. And they will tell me they are a 2. But then I lie them on the table and I start doing my assessment and their body tells me otherwise. And that's because sometimes you can be so overrun with long-term stress that your body actually is tense and it produces discomfort and pain, even though mentally you have maybe overcome that obstacle. If it was a very long period of time that it lasted, your body still keeps that score. So we have a bit better abilities to detect when that stress loop in the body is still in place. So we usually typically feel it around muscles and fascia and a lack of mobility in the spine. So it's very different when you assess one specific vertebrae and how it moves and dissociates between one and the other versus you feeling like your spine is just all one long tight tube. So usually when we get that kind of feeling, it's because there's so much tension going on around not only the muscles, but on the spine and on the dura mater, which is actually tissue that wraps around the spinal cord. And it's actually right within the canal that is made from your vertebrae. So your vertebrae are actually, their big purpose is to protect the spinal cord. And the dura mater is another layer of protection. So when we start feeling a tension that's to the point where all the vertebrae are tight and feel like a big rubber tube, it's like a sensation you feel in your fingers, that usually means that there's a high level of stress that was in place or still is in place and the person isn't as aware because they're just used to being in that rhythm all the time. So when the muscles are tight, that means the fascia around the muscles are tight, and it lowers the flexibility of the dura mater. Has points that are really points of this tissue that are actually attached onto vertebrae, but also right at the junction of the head and neck. There's a lot of attachment points there. And the dura mater actually evolves into the cranial sphere by wrapping around the brain. It becomes a layer of tissue that protects your brain. So when everything gets tight within the spine, on the dura mater, it can also bring tension up into the base of your skull and put extra tension on your central nervous system in general. If it starts doing that much tension, you can get restricted flow of the cerebrospinal fluid, and that can lead to brain fog, dizziness, and some will argue even altered nervous system regulation. When you go to see an osteopath about these problems, does it mean seeing the osteopath is actually going to cure all this for you? No. Stress comes from a very personal place. It's very much about what triggers your stress. Do you have trauma associated to a certain events that then make you get more into a stress mode? There are so many factors that go into stress. But if your body is constantly in a stress loop and you can't get out of it, going to see the osteopath actually is a method to help, give you a bit of breathing room. Just loosen up those structures, loosen up the tightness that's going on all along your spine in order to help these tissues get a bit more circulation and breathing, let's just say, within them. So by helping to get that release, it helps your body maybe not necessarily come fully out of sympathetic mode, but it could actually get you in a temporary state of relaxation. So hopefully get you back into parasympathetic. It may not be permanent, but it could be enough to help make you see the difference of what it's like when you're in sympathetic versus parasympathetic. And then it invites you to start finding the methods to help you getting back into a more consistent parasympathetic state. Therefore, a more rest and digest mode. Once we offer you that space, it then really becomes up to you to seize the opportunity to enhance your well-being and reduce the stress. So how do we do that? And that honestly is a very personal choice. For some, it's exercise, but if you've already been doing, like I was saying about my girlies before who like to do HIIT 7 times a week, that may not be the right choice. You may have to do different types of lower impact exercise. It might be just going for more walks in the sun. It might be prioritizing rest. It might be completely stopping all intense activities and cocooning for 3 days and then finally coming out and doing some movement. It could be doing more meditation to calm the chatter in your brain. Some people need to work on their traumas. Some people need to just sleep more. Some people need breath work. It really becomes a personalized experience. But one thing I do hope to do in this podcast is bring on different people who could talk about these different modalities for you. You know, I've dabbled in my own experiences with some of these. And personally, for me, what really works is not just a one-size-fits-all approach. I like to, of course, go, I'm biased. I do go for some osteo sessions, but I've also gone to see an acupuncturist. I try to make sure I get at least 30 minutes of pure sunlight per day. I go to bed earlier than I used to. So it definitely is a personal choice. And the first step is to choose to make these adjustments in order to prioritize your nervous system going into a healing state. Okay, so I realize that was a big mouthful to take in. And unless you already have a bit of neuroscience training, or you've done a degree in neuroscience or psychology or health, that may have been a lot of information to take in. So my question to you is, how are you doing? Did you follow along with the flowchart? If you didn't and you'd like to have a bit more clarity, I invite you to please go download the flowchart of just the brief overview of how the nervous system works to follow along as I talked through it. You can go find that in the show notes where the link is. If not, you can also go to holistish.com/4. I think next week it'll be very interesting to start talking about how stress then affects the hormonal system, because there's a lot of talk about hormonal dysregulation and balancing hormones, but what does that even mean? How do we get there? I would like to explore this branch with you in the next episode. But it is a whole other mouthful, so I think it's good to stop here. We'll absorb this information, and then I'll share with you next week more about hormones. Take care.
Thank you for being a part of today's episode of the Holistish podcast. Ready to take your wellness journey further? Visit Holistish, that's holistic with an SH at the end, .com, to access our latest resources and wellness tools designed to support your holistic health journey. For holistic health inspiration and a behind-the-scenes look at integrating traditional wisdom with modern wellness, join our growing community on Instagram at the.holistish. If today's episode resonated with you, subscribe so that you never miss out on our weekly episodes, and leave a quick review to help other wellness seekers find us. Until next time, stay curious, stay balanced, and keep exploring what works best for your unique body and mind. Your health journey matters, and I'll meet you right back here next week.